Hello, wonderful listeners. It's Julietta here, and today we have chapter 10. So in chapter 9, Elika and Aunt Caroline meet the ice giant, and the ice giant thinks that the crystal is a gift. So she invites them to her ice cave, and she won't take no for an answer. So let's hear about the ice giant's ice cave in chapter 10. The enormous ice giant led Aunt Caroline and Elika deeper into the glacier. Elika's heart beat rapidly with fear, and she had a strong desire to hold Aunt Caroline's hand. She felt too old for that, though, so she didn't. After about an hour of walking, Elika's fear was replaced by exhaustion. Her thighs burned and her legs were heavy. She fell on the ice twice and was wet from landing in the snow. When they reached the vast opening of an ice cave, Elika held her sides and gasped for breath. She tried to sit on a rock and slipped, ending up knocking her elbow on the icy ground, which would leave a painful bruise. The ice giant entered the cave and beckoned them to follow. Aunt Caroline, who hadn't slipped once and was not gasping at all, patted Elika's back where she sat. "Are you okay, kiddo?" Aunt Caroline asked. Elika nodded, still breathing heavily. "I'm just not made for mountains," she said between gasps. "At least I'm still alive and kicking, as Grandma used to say." "That's the spirit," Aunt Caroline said. "Do you think we should run?" Elika asked. The ice giant wasn't watching them. She had disappeared into the cave. But Aunt Caroline shook her head no. "There's no way we could outrun her," she said quietly to Elika. "Her legs are so long, like 2 tree trunks." Elika turned her face up to the sun, which had broken through the clouds high in the sky. It warmed her cheeks. It felt good to sit still. Her quiet moment didn't last long. The ice giant poked her massive head out of the cave, startling them both. Elika felt fear coming back, turning her stomach. Come in," she said to Elika. Aunt Caroline took her hand. Elika was glad she did. It made her feel braver. They followed the giant into the cave together. The walls and floor of the cave were mostly ice, with dark rock here and there. Sunlight shone through the ice, filling it with turquoise light. Elika's eyes grew wide in amazement. "It's like being in one of my crystals," Elika said to Aunt Caroline. Her aunt squeezed her hand in response. Lots of snow was piled in the corners of the cave. Elika wondered if it actually snowed inside. It certainly looked like it. They stopped by a flow of ice that looked like a river frozen in time. The ice had a green streak in it, a similar color to her own eyes. It was cold and solid to the touch. Aunt Caroline laced on her crampons. Elika pulled hers out of her backpack and did the same, as the ice giant watched them. "I love crampons," Aunt Caroline said, walking easily. "They are so useful." "I have seen humans wear those before," the giant said in her high, clear voice. "It's the first time for me, though I've worn ice skates before," Elika said. She took a few tentative steps. Her legs felt strange and wobbly. "Ice skates?" the ice giant asked. "What are those?" "There are blades on the shoes," Elika explained, "so you can glide over the ice." "Ah," the giant said, "I have seen humans wear those on lakes in the winter." "A boy at my school told me I'd have to wear ice skates in Iceland because the whole place was covered with ice," Elika said, and laughed at the memory. "I told him he was wrong, but now I guess he was right." She hoped she'd see Henry again, even if it was just to tell him how icy it was on the glacier. The ice giant only stared at her in response. It was unnerving, and Elika gulped. The giant led them through an archway, which narrowed into a tunnel. The walls, ceiling, and floor were all ice. They crunched across the ice floor deep into the cave. It was colder in the tunnel and darker. Elika blinked when they exited the tunnel into a bigger chamber, a huge room made of ice with a vaulted ceiling. It had smooth, reflective walls, and the high ceiling was carved with stars and the moon. Elika gasped, and Aunt Caroline echoed her thoughts. "Beautiful," Aunt Caroline said. "This is my home," the ice giant said to Elika. "You are the first humans to enter it." Elika looked around. There wasn't anything but ice, rocks, and piles of snow. Aunt Caroline seemed to be thinking what Elika was thinking. "Where are your things?" Aunt Caroline said. "It's awfully empty in here. Don't you have possessions?" "No," the ice giant said. She clenched her fist and looked angrily at Aunt Caroline. Elika shivered, but Aunt Caroline didn't seem frightened. "Where do you sit?" Elika asked, thinking that she would like to sit down somewhere herself. The crampons made her feel unbalanced. "Sit?" the giant said, her eyes hard. "I mean, do you have a great big chair?" Elika asked, her voice shaking with nerves. The giant looked at Elika and her jaw softened. She replied in a quieter voice. "I don't need a chair," the giant said. "I don't need much." She opened her hand to show them Elika's crystal. "I have the gift," she said. "That is enough." The giant looked closely at Elika. "You are a little small for a human," she said. "How old are you?" "I'm 13, Elika said. Her voice came out weak. She was afraid. She cleared her throat and spoke up more bravely. 13, she said more loudly. 13, the ice giant said. "So young, but you seem older." Elika shrugged. "Just as well," the ice giant said. "If you had a husband or a betrothed, he would have to move here with you." Move here?" Elika said, shocked. "Yes," the ice giant said. "Welcome to my home, which is your home now." The giant smiled, and her ice teeth shined in brilliant light. Elika felt horrified. Aunt Caroline squeezed her hand. How are they going to get out of the cave? Okay, well, we'll find out in chapter 11 if they manage to escape the cave or not. So see you in the next video. Bye!